start? Okay. I would say Temple story is the most pronounced event that ever happened in this city. And when I get done, you'll see the reasons why. Is your first name Bill?
Pete.
Pete. Why I get into it, Pete, so many people didn't know what happened. What they didn't know was all skewered, totally wrong. So I said, I want to get into this story and find out what happened. So I did. Oh, she'll get in there and lay down. And I might say I did a real job on it. I had all the police records, all the newspaper articles. I talked to the McGregors, the two boys, and I talked to the Temples. I did a real job on it. But anyways, here's what actually happened. Frank Temple Sr. was born in Zanesville, Ohio. He was brought to Port Burrell to be raised. Now, under what circumstances, I don't know. But he ended up in Port Burrell, and he was raised, by his uncle. Around the age of 18 or 20, he met a girl from Buffalo named Mary Calvert, and they got married. And they ended up living in West Lorne. Okay? He was helping the farmer in the spring sow crops and helping them harvest in the fall. And he also worked for a guy named Richard Chamberlain, who had a used antique furniture business. So he's up in West Lorne. And then, I think it was 1933, they came to Mount Bridges, the family, and he supposedly had a job of a tobacco farmer. But that didn't pan out. What happened, I don't know, it doesn't matter. They came to St. Thomas, and they're living at 10 Nolan Street. And that house still stands to this day. I should maybe go over who the family is. His wife's name was Mary. The boy that got hung with him, his name is Fred. And he had a boy named Frank Jr. And there's 3 girls, I think. I got their names in my file. Dorothy, who the hell are the other 2? Dorothy, Donna. There's one other. I deal with so many names. So anyways, they come to St. Thomas. Now, Temple Sr. was not a roughhouser. He didn't fight or anything like that. But he liked to steal. And one of his favorite items was bicycles. And him and the boy used to go up to Port Huron, steal bikes in the Canadian side, ride them over and sell them. Excuse me. Steal bikes on that side, ride them back, sell them in Canada. That was their forte. So he come to St. Thomas, and the family is living at 10 Nolan Street. But Temple Sr. and his boy Fred weren't there. The police were looking for them for some bicycles that had been stolen. So they took off to the States, and they went to Erie, Pennsylvania. And Temple living there as a fisherman. And they used this place to stay at. They were there about 2 years, and they were living off the government, plus any odd jobs they could find. Now the story will start to heat up. I got to give you some background to really understand it. So we're getting homesick. They wanted to see the family. So they decided to come home and see the family for a few days and take off again. While they were in the States, they each bought a gun. Temple Sr. had a Ivory Johnson 5-shot pistol, which you load by pulling the top down, putting your bullets in. And it wasn't in very good shape. The boy had an army gun, I think it was a 38. I got models of the guns and everything in my desk drawer in there. I used when I was lecturing. So I had these two guns. They hitchhiked to Port Huron. They crossed the bridge at Port Huron. They grabbed a bus to London. Then they grabbed an LPS train and went down to the family home at Nolan Street, where they found the family was in the process of moving to 17 Queen Street. And by Sunday that night, the move was completed. They're living in Queen Street. Okay? So they had breakfast there. They were getting ready to leave. The boy, Fred, figured, I'll go for a walk before we leave. So he came out of the house in Queen Street. He went down Queen, circled the courthouse, came back up Queen, went in the house. Now while he was out, certain citizens seen him, who knew who he was and knew the police were looking for him. So a citizen phoned the chief, Ketchaball. Ketchaball called Sam McCune into his office and gave him the information. He said, go down and arrest the two of them. We got a warrant on file for the old man, and we'll issue one for the boy right now. So Sam said, okay. Excuse me. Sam left the office, and who's in the outside part of the office but Colin McGregor? He just got through a night shift, and he walked in there to do his reports and that. So Sam went over and told him what he had to do, and he asked if he'd help him. He said, yeah. Now in those days, Pete, the police went to a place of significance or an accident or whatever by walking, riding their bike, or was any distance and get someone to drive them there. Now, Bob McCulley worked on a New York Central. He was a railroad detective. He formerly, at one time, worked for the city as a policeman. So Sam called him up and told him where he had to go and that. Could you take him down? And he said, yes. So he came over and got him. They go down to Queen Street. Sam says, pull up ahead a little bit. I don't want to raise any suspicion. So when they got out of the car, Sam said to McGregor, you go down in the alleyway and guard the back door. Now the alleyway is between Temple Home and the one next to it. McCulley and Sam went to the front door. They knocked a couple of times on the door. Frank Jr. came to the door and said, what do you want? Sam said, is Fred Temple in here? He says, well, why don't you come in and see? Well, at this time, Fred the boy was in the kitchen, and he heard all this. And he said, I knew you were looking for me, because I've been away 2 years. Who would be looking for me that, you know, that's not from around here? So he pulls his gun out, he heads out the back door, and he runs into McGregor. So he takes McGregor's gun and marches him into the kitchen. And the old man tries to go upstairs to get his hat and coat. And Sam says to him, that's Temple Sr., where are you going? He said, I got my hat and coat, I'm getting out of here. So Sam reached up a second time and yanked him down here. And he says, I'm not talking to you. And he got quite belligerent with him. Bob McCulley intervened and said, look it, all he wants to do is talk to you. Surely you can do that. Well, he says, all right, I'll talk to him. So the old man, Sam, and McCulley went to the kitchen. When they got there, McCulley went back down the hallway to the front door. So you got 4 people in the kitchen. Now this is where you really got to understand the story. Over in the southeast corner, there's a stove there, and McGregor is standing right beside it. In the doorway leading to the outside shed and that, the old man was standing there with his gun out and cocked. His boy was standing next to him, and he had McGregor's gun and the one he got from the States in his hands. And about that time, McCully came back in with a police whistle. And he put it on the table. So the boy runs up and grabs it and says, "You're not using that to call the police." Now he had lost it when he was scuffling with the old man, out in the hallway. So anyways, Sam says, "Now look it, you be careful what you do with those guns. We're young married men, and if anything happens to us, you're surely going to hang." So the boy says, "Well, why don't you just let us go? All we want to do is get away." Well, they can't do that, They wouldn't do it, so yeah, it was the boy. The boy said, "Give us your gun." No comment from the old man. Sam says, "I've never given my gun up to anyone now, and I'm not doing it now. I haven't done it yet, and I'm not doing it now." So the boy said to the old man, "Take his gun." So the old man just stood there, Now Sam is sitting on the kitchen table on the north side. McGregor's here, the boy's here, the old man's here, and Sam's sitting on the kitchen table, like on the corner of it. So the boy was up to him to take his gun. When he got up right in front of him, he hesitates. He doesn't know what gun to put down to take his holster gun out. Just that very moment, Sam darted off the table and grabbed him by both hands and threw him up in the air. And the two guns landed on the floor. I think the army gun accidentally fired and the bullet went into a wall or something. And then McGregor, that very instant, made a beeline for the old man to protect Sam. But he didn't quite get there. He was further away from his assailant than Sam was. So the old man shoots him. He tore him up pretty bad. His gallbladder, his liver, something else. He died at 2 o'clock that day. Well then, we're not done yet. The old man goes to fire a third shot, and the gun wouldn't fire. It miscalculated or something. It's an old gun, not in too good a shape. So at that time, Sam had the boy in the kitchen floor and he was on top of him. And the boy was just about out of it. Because wait, I got this wrong. The second shot that the old man made went through Sam's left wrist into the throat area of the boy's and lodged in here. Then he fired the first shot that didn't fire. But Sam has him down on the floor, and the boy's practically out of it, practically unconscious. So when the gun wouldn't fire, the old man turned around and beat it out the door, and Sam picks up the army gun and fires 3 shots at him. He's in an awkward position, but he didn't nick his hand, and he's gone. Now, the rest of the family is upstairs. Young Temple made him go upstairs when the police first came, So Fred Temple Jr. came downstairs with his brother-in-law, Clarence Rose. Clarence is married to the youngest daughter. To see, what the hell is going on, all this gunfire. And then Bob McCully followed the two of them into the kitchen with his gun out. When he get in the kitchen, there's McGregor on the floor with blood coming out of his stomach, and the boy was unconscious. And Sam was just getting him up to his feet, the boy. And he said to Rose and McGregor, or Temple Jr., Rose is his brother-in-law, said, "You two guys pick him up and take him over to the veranda across the street. I'm taking this guy over." That's the boy, You with me so far? So he got over to the veranda there. Then the chief shows up, Ketchaball. So Ketchaball and Bob McCully take McGregor to the hospital in his car. But then he died at 10 o'clock. Or 2 o'clock. But they had people there for blood. They had everything, but he was pretty badly banged up. So Sam says, pulled his gun out of his holster. He's on the veranda. I said, I'm going back there just to make sure he didn't come back. So back in the house, he didn't show up. So by that time, the ambulance showed up. So he put the boy in there and Sam. When they got to the memorial, Sam went in, had his wound dressed. They went in to see how McGregor was. Then he went back to the office to fill out his report. Okay? That is what happened in the kitchen. The most important part of the whole story. Just to finish up the story, there's a lot more yet. Yeah, he died at 2 o'clock. They buried him on Thursday. Now, a funeral was the biggest one ever held in St. Thomas. The funeral home wasn't only filled up, but the ground area was. You know where Ann Street is and Elgin Street is. The funeral coach couldn't even go down there. There were so many people there. They had to go out the back alley down to Hink Street and out that way. Well then, what the hell is the next step? Oh, the manhunt starts for, what's his name? You know, Pete is the biggest manhunt ever held. The Mounties come over from London, and so many of them. Some provincial officers come down from Toronto. They weren't called OPP then, but the same thing. They came down, and every community in the area that had some remnants of a police force were out there all checking their areas. And they had motorcycles at every port of call. Port Dover, Port Bruce, Port Stanley, Glasgow. Any one of them, they had a motorcycle guy there watching the boats, eh? And they had 2 private detectives at the station watching the trains. They saw a guy run out and get on a train that was moving. So they drove up to West Lord and they missed him. They went over to West Lord and they finally got him. Excuse me. It's a guy named Kelly from Quebec looking for work. It wasn't their man. So anyways, we'll go back to the old man now. He was down to Metcalf Street and he turns right. You know where Doug Dunn's offices are? Right in the corner of Metcalf and Center. That used to be the old red iron foundry. And at one time they used to make furnaces and that there. So there's a door from the outside, and Temple Senior went in that doorway, and it's a shop where the men were working, but they didn't even see or hear them because they're banging and hammering and welding and everything. They didn't even hear them. So there's another door leading upstairs. So the old man took the second door and went upstairs. Now that area, Pete, was just a storage area. So he stayed there until the place closed down for the day. And he wrapped his hand with some kind of a bandage where it had been bleeding. Then he got a potato sack that's up there. He filled it up with rags or whatever and threw it over his shoulder to make it look like he was a bum, eh? When he went out in the street, because there's a lot of bums around then. So it's a depression. So he walks down, he walks out of the building, and nobody's there. They're gone for the day. He walks down to the track. He walks all the way to Dutton. And it's on Shackleton Street. He's down to Dutton. He starts walking to the west to a farm called McNeil's. M-C-N-E-I-L. McNeil. So McNeil's in there as some young high school kid, feeding the cows and doing what. And McNeil said to the boy, well, we're all done. Let's go in and eat now. The boy says, well, I got to throw a bit more hay to the cows. I'll be right in. So they didn't room where the hay is. Who popped on a hay ball but Temple, Senior. And he pleaded with him profusely not to tell anyone or, harm him and so on. So the boy left him within the house and he told McNeil what happened. Well, Neil called the police, and they're down there like gangbusters, all over the place. Couldn't find him. So some resident there said, this man used to work for Richard Chamberlain. You might check there. So I go over to Chamberlain's house. He comes out to Brad and he said, yes, he's in there. He said, take it easy, don't go in, he's got a gun, it could be dangerous. He said, I'll go in, I'll jump on him the first chance I get and I'll holler, you guys come in. And they said, okay. So we backed the cars out of the layaway to make it look like they're going, but they weren't. So he was in, he jumps in when he had the chance, and he hollers, and the police rush in and take the gun away from him. George Law, enforcement officer, took the gun, and of course he's arrested right on the spot. And they took him back to St. Thomas, and he was charged immediately with murdering McGregor. And it's a funny thing, way back in the car he said, well, he says, you gotta die sometime. Almost like he knew what was coming, eh? And so a boy was still in the hospital. No charges against him. The journalists were going down to, not St. Clair Leach, the hell is his name? He's from Elmer. Anyways, he's a Crown attorney. Said, what do you do about the boy? What are the charges against him? He says, I don't know. Meaning Toronto hasn't decided yet, eh? So finally, some done their head down in Toronto, about checking everything, as the boy charged. Same charges. So then they put the boy in jail when he's able to leave. So two of them are in jail. Then the dad had broken out of a lot of jails, Temple Senior, excuse me. So he was caught by one of the jail guards monkeying with the lock with a spoon and a fork. So he reported it to his boss, and cut a long story short, they moved the two of them to Windsor, to Sandwich Jail. Now the reason for that is there's a brand new jail down there. The old man complained about it, nobody could get to see him. Well, you weren't behaving yourself, pal. So he brought him back to St. Thomas for the trials. Now here's where everything else fell apart again. If you don't mind me saying so, judge, I forget his name, what the hell was it? He's a real capital A. One of those kinds. They had two trials. One for the dad and one for the boy. The dad's was first. Now listen to this. The trial should have been held away from St. Thomas. Every trial member was a St. Thomas resident or a farmer or whatever. Okay? Now get this. The guy who was a jury foreman in the first trial, they made the jury foreman in the second trial. 4 of the members who sat on the first trial sat on the second trial. Now a jury in the second trial, just before they're going in to deliberate, this judge said to him, just before he went in, he said, now if you're to believe the evidence you heard, you're to find him guilty. Judge does not do that. That's up to the jury to decide. Well, what chance did the guy have? They might as well pull the rope right out there and hung him. So anyways, they were hung 2 days later. Now, in the meantime, the city told McGregor's wife they'd pay for the funeral. They reneged, citing that they spent too much money looking for him. They spent $198 looking for him. Lying bastards. And she had a bad breakdown. And she went in and lived with her dad for 2 boys. And until she could get on her feet. She's a practical nurse by trade. She got on her feet, she went to Benny and Beavis, got her bill paid off. And she was so cheesed off everything, they just left the the city. Well then, a little later, the city started pushing the government, the federal government, to give Sam McEwen the Medal of Honor for his bravery in Temple House that day. Poor old McGregor, the other cop, he got his funeral. We got all that straightened up as a result of my research. The city bought him a medal, a beautiful medal. Cost about $1,200, and they named the police services building after him. See, in life, Peter, when you're dead, you're dead. You're forgotten. You are just forgotten, I'm telling you. So anyways, what was it? Oh yeah. They're buried out at Catholic Cemetery. So Steve took me out there one day and said, oh, they're buried there. I said, Steve, there's something wrong. There's only one grave there. I said, they quit burying people on top of each other 200 years ago. Well, I said, that guy over that when he was alive told me that. Now, there's something wrong here. So I asked, the custodian, I'm just trying to think of his name. Hello, a nice guy. I told him what the problem was. And he was going through the files in his office one day looking for something. He saw a piece of paper attached to a card. By God, it shows where these graves should be. Now what happened, where this one temple grave was, the 4 graves to the south of it were all in the wrong place. They should all be moved over one. So, geez, I can't think of his name. Anyways, the custodian had them all moved over one. There's your 2 graves. Now, some people thought they were building the laneway, which is not true. And I remember my dad, we would buy the Holy Angel Cemetery. I was just a kid. He said, you know, they buried the temples in the roadway there. I found out 30 years later that's not true. They were buried in the cemetery. But what happened? The congregation of the Catholic Church got into a steep argument about it. Some wanted them buried in the roadway because of the crime. And others didn't. The Father West intervened. He said they'll be buried in the cemetery. That was the end of that. Well, I got a hold of the family and said, Steve Peters and I'd pay for a monument if we get the okay from you. Well, they give us the okay except for one thing, they wanted to pay for it. So now you go out there, we each got a flat marker and who we are. That, my friend, is the whole story. But you would not believe the story that evolved out of that. Some had McEwen's gun that shot him and oh, shit.